The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Monday. Another week begins.
Another week begins.
In the Riv.
And it always
I guess I'm not in the center of the screen, CJ.
It always kicks off with the weekend flush on Sunday, as you know.
There we go. Close enough.
And our readership is going up on that little column. So that's always a nice thing. I have to, again, congratulate Marc Dion on his column this week. You know, I call them zombies, he called them zombies. But I like the fact exactly what he calls them. You know, I mean, these are ideas, and we've talked about this how many times, Chip?
Yeah, we've been talking. It's nice to see that you know, somebody else basically is looking at it from a perspective of somebody who's not one of the zombies or is not one of the 1%ers, that looking at it from a, he goes to work every day, whether you know, and he grinds out a living, and he lives in Fall River, and it's nice to see. And you know, I thought, you know, well, most of these ideas we talked about rehashing, we use the same all ideas, but I liked some of his new uses of the acronym RFP. And it doesn't mean request for proposal. He said, you know, it usually means redirect funds to Providence, or sometimes riches for Pawtucket.
Right.
And in the case of people like the taxpayers in Fall River, it means we're really freaking poor.
Yep.
But you still try to bleed us dry. So I got to give him credit. I got to chuckle out of that, and it's because, but you know, the sad reality is it's true. I mean, you know, as I said many shows ago, you know, Fall River's like the, you know, they talk about a child, if he burns his hand on the stove, he'll never put the hand on the stove again.
Not in Fall River.
If Fall River, if Fall River was that child, he'd have no hands or arms, because he'd just keep putting them on the stove until he couldn't reach to the top of the stove.
I know.
Because all we ever do is the same old, our politicians do the same old, been doing it for 30 years.
I was going to say, you know, it's not like it's, you know, only rehashed one or two times. It's rehashed every election cycle.
That's right, Brooke.
Okay? Every election cycle, it's the same story over and over again.
There's only one common denominator. We get to throw money at it.
Right.
All these ideas that have been proven absolutely, you know, incapable of curing the problem. The solution for government is always throw money at it. Throw money at the problem, have a study, form a committee, and, you know.
And what does that equal? I'll tell you what that equals. Screw you, taxpayer!
Oh, so true. And that's why, as he says, we're really freaking poor.
Yeah.
We have no money.
I had to use that video. We haven't used it in some time. I was going through a little bit of withdrawal this week.
Yeah, no, that's, you know, that's an appropriate video, except we should have like double bankruptcy.
I know, really. I'm going to start looking for a bankruptcy video. I really am. Because, you know, it's really monotonous to even beat this item up, because we said it over and over again. And the worst part about it is, and I said this in the weekend flush, we're always a day late and a dollar short.
You're right. And you know what else it shows? It shows a total disrespect for the working people in Fall River. I'm not talking about the people who are making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000. I'm not talking about the people who are living large up in the Highlands, looking down from their perches, you know, on their widow's walks, down to the people. This is like the old days in Fall River when people worked in the mills and they lived in squalor, and the people in the Highlands sipped tea and watched the the poor folk, but at least they had jobs.
And we went down to the Taunton River and dug mussels.
And, it's like they continue to just beat us up with fees and taxes, and it shows a total lack of respect for the average Fall River person, because there's far more of us than there are of them. But what disturbs me is that we are responsible for that, because we never, ever have a clean sweep. I'm waiting for a clean sweep. We've replaced mayors now like 3 in a row, and maybe it's going to be 4 in a row. We never replaced. We had one time where we lost 5 city councilors back in '95, but we've never seen a real purge of everything. We may see it's not even I wouldn't consider it a purge in the school committee, because there are, rumor is that a lot of them aren't running for re-election. So we may see a fairly new makeup of school committeemen. But I'd like to see, if you're going to do it, let's do it for everybody. Do it for the mayor, do it for the city council, do it. Let's get some people in there who are not going to do the same old thing again, and have a little bit of respect for the fact that everybody here is running out of money. And some of the people are going to be, they're beginning to lose homes, because a lot of the people that are stuck here in Fall River, and that 37% of the population that owns property here and lives in it, many of them are retirees on a fixed income, and they frankly just can't afford to get out of the city of Fall River. They're not going to get anything for their house, because the houses are worth nothing in this city. Nobody wants to move into this city that has an income that can afford a house anywhere else. Can't get anything for their house, can't get out, they're trapped. And then they just keep getting bludgeoned to death with taxes and fees. But they still don't get it. All we got to do is look at what happened nationally. We put in a guy who's a businessman, thinks out of the box, had a lot of good ideas, and look what's happened so far. Absent, taking an aggressive action against someone who gassed people, he proved again that Washington was created never, ever to get anything done. You look at his own party fragmented. The Democratic Party is against everything. So what is he going to accomplish? Probably not a heck of a lot. Why? Because the people who wanted to get rid of politicians on the presidential level could not boot their own politician out, because, oh, my cousin knows somebody who can call this congressman and maybe, get a favor for me. That's why people stay in Congress and in the Senate forever. I mean, we just talked about Strom Thurmond. How long was he in the Senate? Like 70 years?
Yeah, 60-something, actually.
60-some years. It's absurd. I mean, the guy was, he was going to the meetings in diapers. He couldn't remember his name. And, and he was one of the most powerful people in Washington. And he was also a racist. He also filibustered against, equal rights. But they kept electing him, because his constituency said, oh, he's got power in Washington and he can bring us things. Well, what he's not bringing you is tax relief. And, what is the result of this kind of lack of forethought on the part of the voters? It's the elimination of the middle class in the United States. That's why the middle class in the United States has virtually disappeared.
Strom Thurmond was 48 years in the Senate.
How many?
48.
That's all?
That's all.
Oh, God, I thought he was in a lot longer.
No, he was a politician his entire life.
Maybe, he was a politician his entire life. Maybe because, he was there for so long, it was like dog years. 48 was felt like 400.
But, he was, heavily involved with the anti-civil rights movement, the racist movement, for the lack of a better expression. And, he fought and spoke vehemently against, integration. He wanted students segregated. He wanted schools segregated. He wanted buses segregated. But they kept electing him.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's just kind of like this, kind of like the city council in Fall River. We elected someone who virtually did nothing for years.
29 years.
because of the fact that she was active in the South End, stop obnoxious smells, and she was a dog groomer, and she knew a lot of people. And it's a popularity contest for city council. People don't understand. The city council is just as important as the mayor.
More so.
More so, exactly. But if they do their job. But, when it comes to holding the tax rates down and trying to protect what little you have left in your pocket, the city council is more important because they're the ones who appropriate and all these fees.
Right.
And, so when people begin to look at, we need to have representatives of the people on every level of government in order to have the people represented. It's not really that abstract a concept. You don't really need to be Albert Einstein to figure out if you want to be represented, you have to elect people who will represent you. We're never going to move this city because no matter how many good ideas come out of the council, if the mayor doesn't want to do it, he's not going to do it. And no matter how many good ideas a mayor has, if the city council won't go along with it, and by no means am I advocating always agreeing with the mayor because my philosophy. I think that there should be peaceful coexistence between the legislative and executive branch, and when the mayor's right, support him. When the mayor's wrong, crucify him. So, but that's the key. The key is that, you can't allow any one part of our government to become in absolute control, which maybe segues into our next thing about the shakeup in the housing authority. We're ready for that yet?
Oh, yeah, no. I actually have audio from the Niagara neighborhood meeting, and I should have brought it in today, and I thought about it, where the mayor said he was going to fire David Sullivan, but he's not making a comment here. Now, I have some issues altogether with this, and Dave Sullivan is right. Every election year, the Fall River Housing Authority does come under fire. And you and I have been around long enough to know that's the absolute truth.
Yeah.
But, this mayor, again, being the petulant little child that he can be, goes on the air and says, I'm going to make a shakeup there. But he's not giving any facts, no idea of a plan. It's kind of like I'm going to take FROED away and I'm going to put economic development in my office. Well, give me the plan. Well, I can't give you that right now because it's still under, if I can't expose it yet. Everything he says is I can't expose it yet. So you have to wonder where he's going with it. But I know there's some problems at the Housing Authority. I know there have been problems at the Housing Authority well before David Sullivan. And you know that as well as I do. The problems aren't new. You know why the problems aren't new? Because the people are the same. And this is the bigger problem.
Yeah.
The Herald News speaks about how Mary Sahadi is a commissioner on that board. And the mayor makes it very clear that he has spoken to the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. Great. Saying they want to fix some of the problems. He's saying that he's calling them great. But, it wouldn't be the first time this mayor's reached out to all 9 of the city council, maybe now all of the commissioners, and said, I want him fired. Which, again, he appoints these people.
Yeah. Well, there's an underlying theme here that there's 2 actually.
And which of his political whores is going to get the job?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. The 2 underlying themes we have, is number one, whether it's FROED or the Housing Authority, those 2 agencies both always come under attack around election time.
That's right.
And secondly, that's the first one. Now, it's a political move on the part of the mayor. He's running for re-election. Everybody knows his numbers are very low. He has his zombies, as you say. That's you give you your trademark on that word. But there are people who think that he does everything well, and But his numbers are low with the general population, and these things are political moves. He's attempting to make things look like he's the great shaker and mover, and look at all these great things he's doing. And, you know, we forgot he was asleep at the switch the first year. All he did was give his friends jobs and raise taxes and fees. But he wants to pull a Flanagan on that, and forgive me. You know, the first year doesn't count, and the second year is kind of, I'm beginning to take the training wheels off, and look what I'm doing. I'm shaking up all these things. But we've seen how many times there actually is anything done with Froed, and Froed seemed to kind of cool down right now because he really ran into a cement wall with Froed. But now they're talking about the shake-up again. The second theme is he wants to control everything. He wants to control Froed, and as you said, he wants to put one of his political hacks in charge of Froed.
Right.
He wants to put one of his political hacks in charge of the housing authority. And, you know, there are a lot of rumors who's going to get that $165,000 a year job if he gets control of it. And let's see what happens. Because, you know something, it may be a political move, but it's a political move that may do him more harm than good, like attacking Froed and losing the entire Ward 9 in the process. Now he's going after another Ward 9er in the housing authority. But, you know, the problem is if it was a look at the housing authority to identify the problem areas and fix them, it would be a different story. But whenever a politician uses the word shake-up, they mean, I want to make some headlines, and it's around election time. That's the thing. When they start talking about shake-ups, if it's not an election time, he would not be shaking up the housing authority. What we're doing is he would be calling to put together a committee, a blue ribbon committee, and we're going to study this, and we're going to bring in UMass Dartmouth, and we're going to do a $100,000 study on the housing authority, and all my friends are going to get a cut. That's what happens after the election. But before an election, we have shake-ups. We're gonna attack these problems vigorously, like they do on every level of government. Promises, promises, promises that never ever come to fruition. This is politics 101. The mayor wants to shake up the housing authority. There's an election coming in the fall. Well, he wants to shake up Froed. But after the election, there'll be committees and studies, and people will make money, and ultimately nothing will happen again.
Well, you know, the thing about the Froed issue, and I said this in a previous show, when the contract was coming up for renewal, why didn't the mayor say something then? Oh, because my plan wasn't in, you know, I hadn't finalized my plan. You know what? You put the contract on hold.
Yeah,
and you don't enter it.
I hadn't done a poll on how low my numbers were.
Exactly, you know, and even with this, with the housing authority, there have been problems with the housing authority for years. Every year, every election cycle, we come up with people who are living in houses that shouldn't be there, people who are dealing drugs, prostitution. You know, the housing authority should be making, you know, unannounced visits. We've heard it all before. We've heard it all before. And you know what? Do these problems exist? Yes. Yeah. Have they existed for just this term? No. Have they existed just since David Sullivan's been here? No.
And the biggest problem with the housing authority is one it's never addressed. The fact that the director of the housing authority has a contract that gives him a bonus based on occupancy.
Right.
And the more people he can import from anywhere in the country to load them up in Fall River, to get them to come to Fall River, he gets more money. He gets a bonus. And that started with Carlton Viveris.
I was going to say,
when his brother was appointed housing director.
Right.
You know, with a lot of qualifications, because running a dye house and being the director of the housing authority is kind of like...
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. But there's the major problem that I see with the housing authority. The director of housing authority has no consideration for anything except his own salary. They're more worried about importing people from Pennsylvania and New York and Boston and Lowell and Lawrence and everywhere. Give us your drug addicted, You're criminals. Give us them all. We got plenty of space in our housing authority. We got plenty of places to stick them, because the more I bring in, the more money I make. And that's the fundamental problem with the housing authority.
Right.
And we've, like I said, it's not rocket science. When you look at cities that don't have as many problems as we do, look at how much minimum housing they have. As little as possible.
Exactly. And, and because again, if your income level is low, businesses don't come here and survive. And your crime rate goes up. When you're at least at the median income, you have your crime rate's a little lower and people have a little bit more money to spend. Well, once again, we're on the opiate hotline in Fall River. Fall River Project Reconnect, which is a subcommittee of the Opioid Task Force.
Subcommittees.
Yep, another subcommittee. All right. And, they're focusing on a person who was homeless in a wheelchair, sleeping in tunnels, et cetera, et cetera. And you know what? Yes, that does happen with people who are opioid addicted. That does happen to people who are homeless. This does happen. But their claim to fame is 26 homes that they have visited. Of all the opiate overdoses in Fall River, you've only made 26.
But read the second sentence in the second paragraph. Oh, actually, the first sentence, too. This is what I talked about, housing authority and bringing in low income and getting more beds. Because this is what it said. It says, a Fall River resident who grew up in Dighton and enjoyed a good childhood.
Yep.
And was a popular kid. Never thought she'd be a drug addict. Well, she is. But where did she come? She didn't stay in Dighton.
No, she came to Fall River.
And this is one of the problems with what STAR's thing is. As you said, that nobody is publicizing the fact that the beds are not given to Fall River residents. They're given on a first-come, first-served basis. So the majority of people occupying those beds are from other communities. And then when they're released, they don't go back to where they
now,
came from.
this individual, she has made something of her life now. She's a recovery coach, which I think is just another word of saying, hey, here's some money to throw at you. But, but she's running a sober house, which is licensed, because we have a lot of those around Fall River that aren't licensed. And we have to ask these questions. We've already taken this where we create a separate court just for drugs now. And we glorify it. That you got sentenced in drug court and you've graduated drug court, and we're going to give you a certificate saying that you graduated drug court. It doesn't say you're drug free. And I wrote about this again this weekend, that this has just gotten to be ridiculous. All right, we're spending millions and billions of dollars a year on fighting drugs. We've been doing this for how many decades? I was speaking with a professor here, at the college, and he said the same thing. He said, we've been fighting this for years. And now we have legal marijuana in Massachusetts, and the company which bought the land up in the industrial park for dirt cheap money is either been bought out or partnered with a major national firm which bucked up their money right off the bat. They made a pretty penny, and they haven't sold 1 ounce of grass yet.
Well, it's nice that this person has, done something. But let's look at the full picture. Let's not look at the tree. Let's look at the forest. It's not coincidental that there's been a 165% increase in homeless in Fall River.
Right.
There's not. It's not a coincidence. The number of Narcan runs that the fire and police departments have made is one of the highest in the state. The fact is that the reality is it's wonderful to see somebody do it, but most of them that come here and stay here, and most of those homeless are going to be addicted for a very, very long time, and that's one of the problems. It's a problem that we've proven we can't handle in this country. Obviously, on a national basis, this has become an epidemic, and to a proportion that no other nation in the world has the kind of problems we have with this. So it's obvious that we're not handling it in the proper manner. So
Well-
you can agree or disagree, it's my opinion, but the fact is we're almost enabling.
We are enabling these people.
You know, we're enabling the, you know, because all we do is keep throwing more and more, you know, rehabs and lifelines and stuff. And, you know, the fact is that there comes a time when, you know, you got to face the facts, and it's not working. And this has become another, well, you know, from the government standpoint, this is not a bad thing. They say it's a bad thing. It's like the war on drugs was back in the 70s. I
Right.
remember Hal Holbrook making a TV commercial telling Americans not to get busted outside the United States for drugs because the penalties were so much greater. That was right after that movie Midnight Run about the American that was in a Turkish prison.
Right.
Came out. So now we're talking the 70s. We're talking nearly 50 years ago. And we've had a war on drugs since the 70s. So I guess, see, Americans love to think we're number one at everything. But you know something? We're probably number 380 in handling this problem. And, you know, as we always do, the government doesn't look at it to try to fix it and look at other countries who had success with these issues.
No,
what they do is they look at this now as a growth industry.
Right, and that's the problem. And, you know, the thing that gets me is this, you know, because I'm reading this article, and, you know, number one, you know I have no love for the drug czar, okay? That's a waste of money right at the get-go, and when he was put in front of the city council, he couldn't even answer half the questions posed to him. This is how intelligent the man can be, okay? Especially when they're talking about his alleged industry. Now, he later said the outreach team is collecting data from the home visits that the opioid task force will compile later this summer for reports. Well, you have two issues here. Number one, your team, your triage team, your outreach team consists of a member of the EMS, okay? You have a member of clergy. You have a police officer, a social worker. You also have a nurse. You know, I got a problem with this. Okay, a big problem. You have a nurse on staff, meaning anything said during that visit is protected under HIPPA, which means, Mr. Aguiar, you can't use it for crap. The social worker is protected information. You can't use it for crap. And if I have to, I'll request under 610 the names of every home you visited. And the moment you turn around and say that that's privileged information, then you are putting yourself in the hole. Okay? Because you can't do it. You cannot take the data you collect by the social worker or by the nurse or even the EMS personnel and use it for anything, regardless of who's paying for it. Okay? That is protected information under federal law. It is also protected under state law. Like it or not, you can't use it. And if you do, I'll be the first one to slap you and the city with a HIPAA violation complaint. And believe me, I'm willing to do it.
Well, you know, this is a problem. As I said, it's a growth industry. You look at the number of agencies that are involved in this plan. Tier after tier of bureaucracy and layer upon layer of people, and ultimately there are going to be jobs. It's just like, you know, it's just like, look, first of all, you get the emergency services involved in the initial response and get the, you know, get a Narcan dose. Now you've got hospitals which make money, then you've got rehab facilities that make a ton of money because those things charge astronomical fees. Then after that, you've got all these coaches and things that, you know, like I said, one of the great problems we have here, it's like war. How much money did Dick Cheney and Halliburton make with our recent wars? The drug addiction problem in the United States is a growth industry for our government and for all the people who own hospitals and rehabs and things. and that's one of the reasons that it won't get fixed.
Yep. Well, you got me all wired up for the day, so keep watching, stay angry, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Stay very angry.